Hi, and welcome back to Educate a Mate, the podcast that gives you just enough knowledge to sound clever and mildly dramatic. Quick disclaimer, this is for educational and entertainment purposes, not a full historical deep dive. Today's episode, the Terracotta Army, thousands of life-size soldiers buried for over 2,000 years to guard an emperor in the afterlife. Because apparently, one army wasn't quite enough. Let's dig down.
Hiya.
Hello. Okay, then before I introduce us to today's topic, which I am excited about because I knew nothing about until about 3 weeks ago. And then in true style of what I assume is probably some form of ADHD, I've hyperfixated on it to the point I love it so much I want to be there.
I'm assuming it's the location now, though.
Kind of a location, yeah. Okay, so have you got a fact?
A fun fact. Oh, yeah, here's one for you. You know, Mr. Bean, what colour is his car in
Green.
episode 1, season 1?
Oh, maybe it's a different colour to green.
Yeah.
I reckon it's like, I want to say cream coloured.
No, it's orange.
Really?
Yeah, it's like orange Mars. So it's like Mars red orange. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was literally just watching Mr. Bean.
As you do.
And he actually speaks in the first episode as well.
What?
Yeah, he's actually sits in an exam hall, and he's like speaking to the guy, and he goes like, "Oh, are you ready for today's test?" And he's just like, "Oh yeah, I've done calculus." And he goes, "Well, I've actually been doing trigonometry. Calculus was last year's test, wasn't it? I think."
That's a pretty good impression of Mr. B.
But like, I was like, "No way, he's actually speaking." And I was like, I probably remember watching these years ago, but yeah, fun fact, his car is orange to begin with.
No way. Didn't they only bring out is it one season of Mr. Bean? It's really small, but in my head it's huge.
Yeah, so I've done what you've done. I watched Mr. Bean's Holiday, which is like 2007 one.
Pretty good film though.
It's a really good film.
Pretty good film.
I actually miss Mr. Bean. I'm gonna watch it from the beginning. I just started watching the first 2 episodes. And
Really get into the storyline.
getting into the story because I was saying to Deirdre, he's an alien, and she's like, "No, he isn't." I was like, "Well, actually, at the start, he drops down, and there's a beam of light that goes like that, and he hits the floor. And the theories behind it are he doesn't actually speak English, and everything he does is so bizarre.
I don't think I've ever seen episode 1 of Mr. Bean, and now I feel like I really need to watch it.
But everything he does, if you watch Mr. Bean, how he interacts with people, it's like the first time he's doing it.
Yeah, same with that's the funny thing, isn't it? Is he does something and it'll be like, oh, I don't know how to do this, and
But that would be my concept of an alien, would be someone that fits into life so seamlessly, because he'd just walk past anyone. If you look at the bigger set behind it and the tasks he carries out, he struggles to do everyday tasks because he's learning that task immediately or trying to figure out what he's on about.
so in reality, he's actually a pretty clever alien.
Yeah, I think he's like a scout alien. Anyway, we're going off a massive topic.
Scout alien. Nice, Mr. Bean. All your facts so far have involved beans.
Beans. Yeah.
Beans, or the choir of the NYPD.
Yeah. No, I've got I've got all good facts on here about the dog, the doggy nose, the nose dog, the gap between the nose on the dog.
Did you actually say that one? Or did you just tell me that one?
No. But did you know a nose on the dog, the reason they smell so well is when they intake through their nostrils, as they're intaking, their exhaust on ours, when we expel the air, it goes back out the same nostril of the mouth. When a dog actually exhausts, it drops down the sides here. So that if you look at the nostril,
it passes over.
yeah, it doesn't go back the same way as how you'd smell. So when they breathe in, like they're panting, it comes through the nose as a sniff, and
There you have to sniff.
and then if they breathe out, it comes down the bottom.
Like 2 facts for the price of 1.
Oh my god, yeah,
He's just on a roll.
on a roll.
Right, shall we start with today's topic?
Yeah, it's rock and roll.
So I want you to, and this is going to be interesting to do because you're going to look at a location and you're going to describe it. You might have noticed I do a lot of my podcast this way. I start and you're here.
Can you rotate that?
Yeah. All I need you to do is imagine that stream isn't there. Any idea where you are?
Stream isn't there. It's not Fukushima, is it?
It's not Fukushima. It's you're in the right part of the world.
I'm going from China to Japan on the
Oh, yeah, first one.
China.
Yeah. So you're in China.
Yo.
Now, you're a farmer in 1974. And it's actually nothing political, this one. This is history-based. So you are a farmer and you're looking for water.
Yes.
And so obviously in true style, you dig for water.
Dig a big hole.
And you've got 6 mates with you.
Mm.
And you're digging and you find a clay head.
Oh, it's just Terracotta Army.
It is.
No way. Yeah, I'd love to actually know about this because I know that it's a Terracotta Army. Now, don't they the only thing I know is it was some leader or ruler who buried his army as a Terracotta Army to look after him in the afterlife, maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Yeah, completed him. That is what we're going to go into.
So a geezer in the 1970s was just like, well, we need water for the farm. And he was just digging a hole and he just come up.
Yeah, so he was looking around. Also, Chinese listeners, sort out your Google Maps because trying to get street view in pretty much most of China is impossible. I've never tried before, and I just realised it's very restricted.
I can guarantee there will be very few Chinese people that listen to this in China. It'd have to be UK, like, visiting or worldwide visiting people that leave China because there is no, like, platform. Like, they don't have WhatsApp. They have WeChat. They have a completely different thing than Google. They don't have mainstream media that we possess.
Oh,
You know-
well, I really hope we reach them at some point.
Did you not know that?
I know they're very restricted, but to be honest, most of the world's going that way. So.
Yeah, I mean, like, so they have a point system. Individual civilians have a point system.
They too, which we'll go over in a second.
Okay.
So the 7 farmers, of which you were one of them, they found this clay head. Now, if you found a clay head on your property, what would you do?
I wouldn't tell anyone.
Yeah, well, that was probably their first mistake. They told a lot of people, actually, and at first people didn't really believe them. A lot of scientists and archaeologists were like, farmers know nothing. You're just trying to dig for water, fuck off. And anyway, somebody eventually took them seriously and realised that actually this was probably part of a massive burial chamber.
So you're saying the picture I'm looking at now of Outlet Warriors where they were all dug up or found?
Ish. Like I say, trying to get on Google Maps, this is about 20 miles away from where it actually is.
Sorry, let me just stop you there. Oh yeah, I'm just going to show you a picture of John Lennon Airport, but I can't get to it. So what I am going to do is show you Runcorn.
Honestly, trying to get to... So, Xi'an is the area where it was found, and obviously it would have changed slightly now. It's probably more built up and everything else. But literally, if I try and street view any of this, it just comes up with tourist attractions. So you see the little blue dots?
Yeah.
So it's literally like trying to find somewhere suburbs, farmland is so hard.
Oh,
that probably would...
Guy now.
That one would have been a better one to go for, to be honest. I didn't know that one exists.
I
I just want to see what's down the roads. I'm not trying to do anything suspicious. I just want to see people's houses.
just want to educate people.
Exactly. Yeah, I just want to go where they actually found the clay head, but that's pretty much near impossible. And so, with 7 of these farmers, they were given 10 credit points each, which is about 1 yuan or 5 pence for us.
Nice.
And as the land was part of a collective farm, they literally got nothing else from it. Any ideas what happened to...
When you say a collective farm, you mean like a farm of a holding where it's shared upon the community?
Yeah, I think that means that it was owned by a rich landowner, and they
It's
basically...
probably been owned by the state.
Yeah, very likely. Very, very likely. So out of those 7 people, 3 of them died early or in distress. And so one of them actually hung themselves. One died literally penniless and unable to afford absolutely anything, including the medical care he needed. And a couple of them worked in the tourist attraction side of it. And so they'd like sign books for tourists and stuff. But most of them, yeah, just ended up dying really sad deaths and not really bringing any wealth to the farm.
This is a bit like the Tutankhamun discovery where it was Lord Carmarthenshire who paid for the dig over the space of a year. They didn't find anything. The second year they did, but when they discovered it, he lost his most prized pet, which is the budgerigar, which was eaten by a viper. And they were stating that when they opened
Oh, they said, yeah, a curse was
the
unleashed.
curse was released when they opened the tube, and the viper was the protector that killed the budgerigar. And then loads of people it's all been quite debunked because they go on about these horrible deaths.
Yeah, I remember Horrible Histories went through it quite a lot, and they were like, "Oh, this person had like a scab on their face and they died."
Well, he died from that. He died from a shaving cut, and he got infected. And he
As you do.
yeah. But things like that happened in that era, and it was over like a 17-year period where these people died. It's not like
Yeah, it's not like it all happened within like one of these died in like his 50s.
yeah, like 1 in 5 fucking operations on your wisdom teeth in the Victorian times, you'd die.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, yeah, it isn't more sort of like causation. It's
Yeah.
more just the people that actually found it to begin with.
Which is shame, isn't it? Really, like,
It is because they've discovered that. If anything, like, I don't know, say for example, you end up with, for example, Christopher Columbus or Francis Bacon or people like that who've discovered things, and whether they're right in being praised or not praised. To be fair, Christopher Columbus these days is seen as just like a mess, a racist mess.
It was a different era then, wasn't it?
It was, but yeah, basically these guys just got absolutely nothing for it. And the family actually expressed that, yeah, this was a lot of misfortune and they kind of wish that just the whole thing had just been left. So if you were part of that family, then you actually would have done a really good job of just hiding it and been like, should we just dig a bit further?
No, I would have. I personally, well, it's difficult though, isn't it? Because if you don't say that you've discovered it and you dig them up and sell them on the black market and you get found out, you would have been probably executed by the state over there.
Probably you might be able to move out because just on a rough estimation, the FBI have estimated that each individual terracotta soldier is worth $4.5 million.
One geezer.
One geezer.
How many are in circulation? How many are like?
You want to take part in the terracotta stock?
Just how many are like wandering around the streets?
We'll get to how many there actually are. Actually, we can go through how many there are now, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tell you exactly how many soldiers there are. I'm going to give you an example of size. Any idea how big about 21 square miles is?
It's fucking big. So like Jersey's like 49 square miles, so it's half the size of Jersey.
Yeah, so the closest I could find is Manhattan, which is around 22 square miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got Manhattan up there with New York at the bottom, obviously Statue of Liberty and everything, and then it goes up towards Inwood at the top. Pretty big space. That's the entire size of the mausoleum.
So what I'm going to say, so they dug them up and then took them somewhere, or they just dug up that area and left them there?
So they started digging up that area.
And this is where they found them all.
And they found them, the vast majority. Now, there are other terracotta mausoleums as well, but none of them are as big as this one. Any idea whose mausoleum it actually was? He's pretty important. From what I can gather, he was not a nice guy in the slightest. As most
Genghis Khan?
It wasn't Genghis Khan, but on the same sort of level.
Adolf Hitler?
Again, very similar sort of level.
Keir Starmer?
Ooh, almost.
Stalin?
Okay, we'll stop. Just kidding. Mussolini. It was Qin Shi Huang. Apologies if there's any mispronunciations, which there absolutely will be. Any idea what he did for China?
He built the wall, I bet, yeah.
He was involved in a bit of the wall, but the wall was kind of there before him.
Okay.
He actually destroyed parts of the wall as well.
Liberation.
But he did something
I know.
Oh dear.
The Silk Road. Not the Silk Road?
Not the Silk Road.
No. Why are you laughing at me? Silk Road.
What he did was there were multiple areas of China before it was China. So rather than China being called China, in sort of like the 3rd century, there was 6 states. And then there was Qin as well, which is the one that he was in charge of.
Qin.
You might be able to see where this is going.
Yeah, he liberated them.
Yeah, so you could say liberated. You could say he just declared war on them and took over them.
So what did we have then? We had Qin.
Now I'm going to have to try and pronounce these. So we had Qin, and Qin was the one that sort of unified all of China under the Qin dynasty. Yeah. We had Han, Zhao, Dai, Yan, Wei, Chu, and Qi, I think. Qi? QI. I think a Q in Chinese is like a ch sound.
It's a ch, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think of Qi.
Qi.
Maybe. And yeah, in pretty much all of this, he basically took over the majority. We're not going to focus on how he did that and everything else because that's a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah.
But from what I can gather, he wasn't particularly nice in the way he took over places. There was a lot of slavery. There was a lot of torture. There was a lot of him sort of saying, well, I've taken over you now, so now you have to rule under how I rule and things like that. And very dictatorish, as they usually are when they take over an entire continent.
Yeah.
China is not a continent. It's a country, isn't it?
Asia, isn't it?
Yeah, it's part of Asia. So he ended up nearly dying because of multiple assassination attempts. So eventually he got to the age where he thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look for the solution of life, the elixir of life that will save me.
He repented all his sins.
And he repented all his sins and he lived happily ever after.
No way.
No, he probably died a pretty grim death, to be honest, because he ended up sending lots and lots of people out to try and find this elixir. Generally, if they didn't find it, they were executed. If they did find it and it didn't work, they were executed. Normally, the way they're executed is their favorite way to kill people is normally burying alive, which is pretty grim, really. And probably quite time-consuming. You got to dig the hole to begin with, unless, of course, you get them to do it. But he sort of really started to lean into this elixir of life thing, and he took all sorts of magic potions and all sorts of things, and a lot of them had mercury in them. Any idea whether mercury's good for you?
Right. The story I can tell you about Mercury, yeah? There was a lad I used to work with a very long time ago, and he said he had a bad tummy. And he said he had a really bad tummy, so he turned around to the gaffer at the time, and he's like, we got any of that mercury knocking around? Because I used to work at this old engineering place, and he was after some mercury, because he's going to put a dip of mercury on his tongue, which would help him shit it out, because he's constipated or whatever, bad stomach. And the gaffer was like, you can't do that, you'll kill yourself. Like, you'll fuck you up. He's like, no, I've seen it online. So I just know it's not good for you.
Yeah, it's pretty poisonous, to be honest. It's not great for you at all.
Oh, you get mercury toxins, don't you, from eating too much tuna? You get really bad headaches, don't you?
I've got a headache.
Too much tuna, man.
I had tuna for tea.
Too much tuna.
Like 6 cans of tuna. So he ended up drinking a lot of and taking and ingesting a lot of mercury. And when he was actually buried around a lot of mercury as well, because he thought mercury was like the new super fancy thing that was going to cure everything and save him.
It is a very cool metal to watch.
It is incredible. Like, mercury vapor lamps are ridiculous. The fact that we figured out that you can switch on a lamp and it turns it into mercury vapor from a little tiny piece of mercury is, it's ridiculous. It's honestly, like, impressive.
Cool.
But he wasn't quite on that. He wasn't trying to heat anything up or keep things nice and bright. He was just trying to save himself. So he ended up sort of trying to, like you said, building this Terracotta Army to save him from anybody in the afterlife. And being from that sort of dynasty era, they very much believed in the afterlife. And he built 8,000 life-size soldiers to do that. They all faced east because that's where he feared most of his enemies would come from.
The east?
The east.
Why would he face east?
So he started
on
the
so he was West China and he faced east toward.
Yeah, so so if you imagine, if for anybody who can't see a map of China right now, he's far West China and he liberated
That's like Himalaya, Mongolia.
Yeah. And he took over everything on the east.
Yeah.
And so all of his enemies were kind of on the east of him. Yeah. So all of these soldiers point to the east, which is pretty interesting. And there's a little image of them.
Oh, wow.
They're all having a great time.
They did horses as well, did they not?
Yeah, so they didn't just do your standard soldier. They did clay soldiers, they did horses, they did chariots, they did officers as well. And all of these were built to guard the tomb of the emperor of China, the first emperor.
I'll just stop you there a sec, though. So are they hollow inside?
We'll go through the building specs in a minute, because it is really interesting. Cool. So they are life-size, and every single face is different. They've got different features on them. Even their arms and their legs and their uniform is slightly different. because it was suspected it took over 700,000 people to build it. So this started to be built when the Emperor of China, or what was going to be the Emperor of China, was about 13, which is weird, isn't it? Like, when you're 13, you go, right, I'm going to start building a big old mausoleum for me to die in. But it was probably more a case of, I'm going to be the best emperor ever. If anything, I imagine it was a little bit of an ego to be like, I'm going to, like the thingies did in Egypt, the pharaohs in Egypt, they'd be right, we're going to start building of the massive, massive pyramid.
And what is the life expectancy of someone of that era, though?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because if it's like 32 or 28, that's like someone who's 35 now doing the same thing at 13. Because there's
They just figure this out. So, trying to guess?
28.
You're pretty close, actually. Yeah, 25 to 30 years.
So he was halfway through his life. So that's us at 35, 40. So
I guess, yeah.
the Terracotta Army.
And to be fair, he would probably live to more sort of like 40, 50-ish.
Oh, yeah, he's going to kick back and relax, isn't he?
Because let's be honest, even though he's Emperor of China, he's probably getting looked after pretty well.
Yeah.
So he built this. Well, he did it personally. He had absolutely nothing to do with it. He got everybody else to build it for him. So they're all life size, and every single one of them is different. They're all organized in terms of military formation. And so archers and things were towards the back, chariots were towards the front, so on and so forth.
How many years did this take to make?
A big old long time. It's the afterlife security system of the
That's mental, isn't it?
221 BC. So there's a lot of papers and there's a lot of reports of him being obsessed with control, immortality. He was going to rule forever. Even after death, he was going to rule China because he brought them together. He was incredibly powerful, but at the same time, he was ruthless and paranoid. And to be honest, he sounds like a bit of a cunt. But he did standardize writing. He standardized the money across China. He standardized roads. So he did kind of do some stuff. Now, I'm pretty sure most of that would have been so he could get richer, he could get around faster. But it did kind of help a little bit. So we'll move on to who built it and how long it actually took. About 700,000 people helped to build this. They'd include conscripts, they'd include prisoners, they'd include people that have been enslaved from other neighboring counties or states. These people would literally spend years underground building these things, because the entire thing is underground.
Oh,
So the entire mausoleum is based in this underground burial chamber.
What? So they didn't. Oh, so I thought they buried them, and over years, like sediment had sat on top of it.
No, yeah. So they literally they purposely dug down, which is pretty cool, really. They probably used all sorts of dangerous tools. I'm imagining there wasn't great health and safety around the whole thing. And they wouldn't really get fed too much, and they didn't really get paid either. But they did come out with some absolutely fantastic.
I just want to stop you a sec though, because like we're saying like forced labor, slave labor. Well, like how do we know that? Because when I went to Mexico and we saw the Chichen Itza, and the Mayans sacrificed someone to their gods.
Yeah.
And you see it in Apocalypto, where it's like, I mean, they chop their head off and all this, and it's all horrible. But when I was there, I wasn't. It was a bit of a misconception because it was a right. Like you would become famous. If you were the chosen one to be sacrificed, you'd be treated like a king next to the kings.
Yeah. As to be fair, a lot of sacrificial people before they are sacrificed are sort of really treated like draped in jewels and fed really well,
and so maybe you would have. I don't know. You'd be very proud to say, listen, I want you to come with me in my afterlife, but I need you to make a terracotta replication of yourself. And
yeah, I just don't think from sort of like historical reports, that he was quite in the way of knocking on people's doors going, do you want to earn a bit of extra cash? I'm just getting together a bit of a team. And then the Avengers music starts playing. Yeah, I think it was pretty forced, to be honest, from the sides of it. There's sort of historical accounts of people dying during construction, and a lot of people were buried in or near the actual complex as well. So before we go on to sort of the more innings of the tomb and how it's so hard to unearth and figure out how big and what's actually in there and so on and so forth, in terms of how the actual soldiers were made, so they'd start with fine sand, grit and water, which would make clay. Now, this was stronger and less likely to crack when it was actually fired, so when it's put at ridiculously high temperatures. And it's fantastic for large hollow figures. And so for anybody that's actually taken part in any sort of pottery, if you have a nice hollow figure, obviously you've got to have an air hole somewhere. If it's a completely sealed unit and you've got an air bubble somewhere, there's a very, very high chance it's going to blow up. So this wasn't sort of just like a little bit of clay, as it's thrown down, isn't it? It's called on the old slab, like the old ghost.
Oh yeah, Ghost.
Uh,
That's a crazy film, that is Ghost.
It really is. Who thought I'm gonna do a film around a guy who's died and I'm a potter?
It was Whoopi Goldberg where she's like in the room with him and he's like, tell her to listen to me, tell her. And he's like, you don't believe me, will you? He's like, just say ditto, ditto. And she goes, you're just like, what the?
Wow. So they were built from clay, and you ever pulled apart a Lego man?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. So there were different teams specialized in heads, arms, legs, torsos, and the armor as well. They were all made in molds, which is why they managed to do it. So the time it took to make this entire army was about 40 years, which isn't too bad for 8,000 soldiers of all different looks and origins and lots and lots and lots of people. And by the way, if people didn't make them properly, or if they ended up messing up, they'd probably get buried alive or shot with a crossbow or whipped until they were dead. They would mold these parts, so the bodies were fairly standardized.
Can I just stop you a second now? You've just debunked Economic 101, because Economic 101, assembly line production, was introduced by Adam Smith, and the first time it was properly introduced was to cut down the build time of the Ford Model T, which would massively reduce the actual production time, and then therefore
did.
So
they've essentially done the same thing,
and they've done the
years before.
Yeah. So Economic 101 straight away, assembly line for head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
That's what we call this: head, shoulders, knees, and toes. The assembly line. So they would assemble them afterwards once they had sort of molded all of these parts. And then from there, they'd then customize the details. They'd have really basic people sort of making the molds because that's a pretty basic job. But then in terms of the actual artistic side of things, they'd have literally thousands of artists.
Oh, just like...
They'd have teams of people as well. So they'd have, say, for example, a foreman and then a team of like slaves or workers that would work. The foreman would be in charge of a certain amount of soldiers. If they weren't meeting their quota, then they'd probably all end up dying, including the foreman. And so it was kind of on him to make sure.
I reckon they were quite sound to him, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It'd take ages to train someone up to that expertise, sure.
So we look, you've put 6 fingers on him, you stupid bastard.
He's here, right, I'll get rid of him. Right, well, it took fucking 12 months to train him. Another 12 months to train another guy.
Yeah, I'm guessing the foreman got treated slightly better than the slaves, but still probably not great. And then, so in terms of how they were actually built, the legs were made first, nice and solid. They were made sure they had a heavy weight at the bottom to make sure they actually, and obviously flat at the bottom to make sure they actually stood properly. The torsos, and this one is interesting, torsos were then coiled or slab built. So in terms of slab built, it's like lots and lots of little bricks to make a torso. In terms of coiled, and I didn't even know this was a thing until I had to figure out, like, sort of research into how it's actually done. So they'll get a rope and they'll soak it in liquid clay, and then they sort of coil it around to make like a cylinder.
Wow!
And then they
against it,
and then they just put clay against it to make. And I was like, that is clever. That's fast as well. That's a quick way to do stuff. They were constructed pretty fast, and then they were hollowed to stop them exploding in the kiln, and obviously thicker bases and stuff to make sure they had stability. But what is pretty impressive is these were all sort of designed and made and everything else, not only to survive the firing process, which I'm guessing they did end up with quite a few blowing up, not only to survive the burial as well. Now, I don't know whether the mausoleum has a roof to it or whether they just covered it in a lot of sand. I couldn't really find too much on that. And as I can't go on Google Maps to look at it, I can't really see what the layout's like.
Well, I feel like you should have visited first.
Or maybe we go.
Maybe we visit
And then release this. Just add in at the end.
We release this and then come back with a follow-up part 2 and go, there was no roof.
And just say that for 45 minutes. But they also withstood 2,000 years of pressure of being underground, surrounded by dirt and other things and sand. And
Well,
pretty impressive. Yeah, earthquakes, there's all sorts of things.
so we've discovered these, but have we discovered anything relating to the production, such as like the kilns or the outbuildings, or do you know what I'm saying? So for them to do such a massive industrial size operation, there must be outbuildings and equipment of some kind to produce all this material.
They've not really found them, per se. They've done soil studies and things like that, but I think they're not really sure where the primary manufacturing site was. They found other bits of pottery and kilns in other regions, and they found them where other people have little mini terracotta armies.
Well, from my personal experience, I know they were built in a place called Shenzhen. Have you ever heard of Shenzhen?
No.
I don't know. Go on, type it in. Shenzhen. XAI. It's all one word. Chinese takeaway.
Chinese takeaway. Glasgow. Is that the one you mean?
Well, from my personal experience, yeah. These guys here, if you look at their meals are terracotta based.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, they got all the dishes are terracotta? Fuck's sake. So the experts that apparently know how big kilns need to be to fire these say the kilns would need to be at least 2 meters in diameter.
Yeah.
And they'd have to reach about 1,000 degrees. So most modern day kilns reach between 1,500 to 2,000.
Yeah.
Obviously, these were probably slightly more primitive, where you're probably talking about 500 to 1,000-ish. They've not actually found where all of these were fired and built, which is very interesting but then maybe they built them across the entirety of China.
There's some maths that we can do here. It's just going to take a long time, but you can work out over the 4-year period of 8,000 of them, and say, for instance, there's one per torso. How long does it take for the kiln to reach? How long does it take for the kiln to reach that temperature? Plus, how long does it take for that terracotta torso to be treated so it's ready baked? Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God.
There's a lot of math.
So firing a life-size terracotta warrior requires a slow heating process lasting at least a week to avoid cracking.
And that would be per soldier or per torso?
And there's over 8,000 soldiers, which means in 40 years...
40 years.
This is a lot of maths, and I think I'm going to have to come back and...
Oh, no, it's 52 weeks a year. 52 times 40. So just fire that one up, which is...
I thought you were going to work it out there, and then I was like, I'm impressed. You're already...
It's about 2,080. Yeah, 2,080. So that's 2,080 weeks. So you can produce 2,080. If it takes a week to produce one thing, you need at least... Well... Is it
4 kilns?
It just needs 4 kilns, like in 40 years.
Easy. It just needs to be a really non-stop process.
Well, what I think is it 1 kiln per soldier?
Yeah, from the sounds of it.
Okay, so yeah.
Which, yeah, I guess is not impossible then if you had 10 kilns on a site.
Yeah, there you go. You can do 2,080 non-stop, 52 weeks a year, 40 years. That's how. Well, it's 16-hour workday in the Chinese, and they do 6 days a week. No, it's a fact. 16...
I think they did 7 days a week. I'm not gonna lie.
7 days. I suppose you can rotate the team.
Yeah, when they die, you just get new ones in.
I was gonna let them have a break and sit them down.
They're not allowed to have a break. They've got to make these soldiers.
So you only need 4 kilns then. 4 kilns.
I'm gonna ring the Chinese embassy tomorrow. We'd then be like, we solved this.
Do you remember last week when we solved JV Cooper?
Yeah.
Now it's just so.
And the week before, it was the hot dog that's a lie.
Oh, yes. He answered that. So we're just fact finding, and we're just giving you the knowledge, and it takes 4 kilns over 40 years.
Non-stop, instantly, in, out, in, out, in, out.
In out, well, you used to work at Domino's, so you're quite used to that. In out, in out, in out.
I did. I was one of the best jobs I ever had. I got real big. It turns out sitting in your car and eating nothing but pizza ain't great for you.
Yeah, I did that with the Chinese, though. That's good.
Yeah. Anyway, so once they were assembled, they were dried out, and they were all painted afterwards. They were finished and painted.
Wow, so you actually, when you see the Terracotta Army, they're actually originally painted.
Yeah, I'm guessing these days it would have worn off a little bit.
Because they would have been water-based paint, most likely.
So it was actually a layer of lacquer from tree sap.
Oh, wow, yes, there's a natural...
Yeah, so they
Jeez.
paint with sort of mineral pigments as well, so like red, blue, green, white, and purple. And most of these would come from natural things like cinnabar or malachite or bone ash. Purple was very synthetic and pretty advanced to make, so I'm guessing only like the generals or the more fancy ones had purple on them. But they'd have coloured armour, they'd have patterned tunics, they'd make sure the facial features were fully detailed. And so when they actually discovered these and they started to pull away all of the substrate around the individuals, they had to make sure, obviously, they weren't rubbing things off to make things worse. So they had to be really careful with that. Otherwise, the paint would just flake off and then they'd just be, I don't know, terracotta colour.
That's what goes through my head, though. It's just orange.
Apparently, they were very like loud and bright and intense and really good looking, I guess, however good looking a terracotta person can be.
An appealing army.
Good looking.
Yeah.
Really hot.
Just come straight out of the kiln, mate. Red up.
Oh. And then they also had weapons as well.
What, actual weapons or terracotta weapons?
So actual weapons.
That's cool, that is.
Which is cool, but also expensive. It probably would have been cheaper just to make terracotta weapons.
It is a stone.
Yeah, they actually had swords, spears, crossbows, arrowheads, and most of them were bronze. A lot of them were mass-produced. Some even had some anti-rust coatings to them.
So, do you know what's crazy is, like, the sit down and the chat about what is about to take place. The option must have been, listen, we can do a terracotta army, but the weapons are going to have to be weapons. So at what point they should have said, we'll make a terracotta man and then we'll just dress him up with the armor of the time, with the weapons.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, surely, like, putting the armor on him would have been easier than
just
making the armor.
Just build a stick, man, out of wood, and then put the armor on him, and he's there.
And then it would have rotted and we'd never know it even existed.
Just big piles of fucking...
But it's interesting. Do you not think that there could be in like things like South American culture with Mayans and things like that? They would have made things more out of wood. They might not have done, but say they did make a lot more things out of wood. And so say they have a massive underground army, but it's of wood. We'd never ever know because it would have rotted. But there's stuff like that that's crazy. They were fully equipped to fight. They had a functioning armory as well. All the weapons were organised by sort of type and in racks and things like that. So everything was neat and tidy.
That's crazy cool. And this is going to be a really stupid question now, right? And they've produced a terracotta army. They're hollow inside.
Yeah.
Would you not say then that you would use that hollow inside terracotta man to
put a real man?
To put a resting place, a man that has died in there.
Like a sarcophagus.
Exactly, because then you're taking that person to that afterlife. So, for instance, if you had soldiers that were very trusted that had died in battle, you'd bury them there, and then when your time comes and you're buried there, the remaining ones that are open, you'd just then keep burying the soldiers true to that.
And to be fair, if you've actually got a pretty healthy army and they all respect you, that makes sense. So when you die, you can make sure your terracotta army has all of your friends and allies and everything else around you.
Yeah.
This chap, I do believe, didn't really have that many allies. He just had a lot of people working under him. So I don't think it was a case of, I respect them because they're a really good general. I think it was more, I'm paying him to be a really good general.
Okay, yeah.
So they were placed in these long underground trenches once they'd been fired. And the trenches were lined with bricks and they were arranged in military formation, and then wooden beams were used for the roof. There we go. There was a roof. Yeah, there was a roof. We don't need to go.
Just cancel them tickets. Yep.
And the roofs were covered with mats and then soil. The issue being
Mats.
Yeah.
Like multiple people called Matt.
Yeah, just lies down.
Look, what you slave like? You what's your name, Matt? Get on that.
No,
roof.
go on, we're running out.
You're with your roof. You're a roofer now, lad.
No, this went B&M, didn't they? Got like 300 of them mats. The issue is when your when your roof's made out of wood, it tends to rot, which means that it collapses, which means that a lot of figures ended up shattered or broken.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
But it does mean that it tells a story about how they were made and what was involved in making the roof. Because if everything was absolutely perfect, they'd have to start destroying things to figure out how things were made.
Is this the multiple terracotta armies then? Or is it just...
There is multiple Terracotta Army. So this one's the biggest by far, but there's a few other, and some of them, the most recent one found, the terracotta soldiers are like knee height, which is kind of cute.
little ones?
Yeah, they're just like, ah,
Little nodes?
yeah. Don't know why that's so funny.
But no, so the other multiple ones that they found, was that from the same leader or different leaders?
Different leaders.
So
different
they've
leaders.
got wind of this geek.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he's got an army. I'm going to make an army, but I've got nowhere near as many people or as much clay.
We've got a really small kill.
We've only got 2. We need 4. There was a lot of engineering behind it, which is pretty impressive. And it was all built on suffering, which is exploitation and suffering.
To produce terracotta, what were the ingredients then?
It's essentially clay.
It's just essentially...
So it is, yeah. So the only reason it's called the Terracotta Army is because they fire it afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just a case of they make clay and then leave it in the sun to dry or whatever. They genuinely fire it at like 1,000 degrees to make it stronger.
Okay.
When they first opened the tomb, there was all sorts of ancient texts found as well. They had loads of traps, which is very Indiana Jones. But it would be things like automatic crossbows that would be set off from pressure plates and stuff like that. That's pretty cool.
Right.
Rivers of mercury as well, because he was obsessed with mercury. The idea being is if he was surrounded by mercury, it would help him prolong his life in the afterlife, I guess. But he also stopped tomb robbers. So when they first excavated it or began excavating it, there was ridiculously high mercury levels in the soil. But what is kind of crazy is the main tomb, so where the actual emperor is buried, has not been opened yet.
Why?
Because it's so big, and to excavate it takes so much time to not break stuff. And there's things like traps, and they're not really sure what to expect, so they're just taking a sweet-ass time with it. And yeah, the main tomb has not really been opened properly. So in our lifetime, we might actually see it being excavated properly, which would be pretty cool.
That is crazy cool.
So he ended up dying, and then they buried him, and so on and so forth. But it's really interesting that he decided with his time to not only make sure China was one unit, which is, let's be honest, an absolute powerhouse in the world now.
Yeah.
And that was him being basically the start of it all. But he also managed to kind of be pretty genius with his engineering, or at least hiring people who would be genius with their engineering to make an entire terracotta army to protect him in the afterlife.
It does scare, like, how badass China used to be, like, hundreds and hundreds of, like, 1,000 years ago. And then, like, you hear about World War II, the Japanese invading China. And you're like, how did it get to that? Did you find any treasure then? Like, anything of worth? You know how pharaohs are buried with gold? And...
Aside from the individual soldiers that are 4.5 million each.
No, yes, you know what I mean. I mean, like, when he's passed, the idea is to take all these people with him and defend himself into the next life.
So, in recent discoveries, they have found a prince's tomb, which apparently has been unlooted and untouched by grave robbers. It was a 16-ton coffin.
16-ton coffin?
16 tons. And in that tomb, they found really high-value artifacts, including jade, gold, loads of silver items, including silver camels, if you're imagining what silver items might be. Over 6,000 bronze coins, bronze armor, weaponry, cooking utensils. And whilst the central tomb has not been opened because of the high levels of mercury and concerns about damaging things and the potential traps and things like that. And so for an idea of how high the mercury is, it's 100 times higher than it should be in soil samples, which is pretty wild. But they suspect it's very, very likely from scriptures and burial records. There's probably ancient texts There's probably jewels, there's probably sort of various traps and things as well. But it is interesting that with ground scans, the scans have revealed that the tomb is large, precise, and it probably holds a lot of things that is still sealed.
Yeah.
So if we're going to start a film very Indiana Jones based, that's probably the place to start, I think.
Yeah. Underground.
So they have only found about 2,000 to 3,000 of the terracotta warriors. They've all been excavated, but there's only limited information on it as well. So there's loads in terms of how they're made and the dynasty and stuff like that. I just want to know from the podcast.
Just on a mood.
Just give what's his face a ring.
Do you remember about the Silk Road before? Have you heard about Afghanistan? And
I've heard of Afghanistan.
So they're trying to build this super highway through North Afghanistan that links China to, well, more closer to obviously the West. And I forgot what was going off on this. Oh yeah, there was two, Vice documentaries. Was
Yeah.
it? No,
Yeah.
sorry, it wasn't Vice. It was Fern, your mate.
Oh,
Yeah, mate of Fern.
Fern podcast. Honestly, Fern podcast is fantastic. Super podcast.
I think it was Fern, but I can't remember.
Here's just breaking you quickly. Have you noticed other podcasters very, very rarely mention podcasting as a form of research? I think at least I noticed that. I think
Not many people do it.
very rarely see people
Because-
go, "I listened to this. It was really interesting, so I'm going to expand on that."
Unless it's the spooky stuff, and then you still don't really get much. Anyway, I was going on about Afghanistan, and they're trying to build this super highway from east to west that links China closer to the west. And they went up there. They got all the permits and everything from to Afghanistan. They're going through it, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. And just before, from here, probably 10 miles away distance, is where the highway is. And then the Afghans just stopped them. I'm just like, no, you can't go any further. That's it. It's just,
No, not play this game.
it's just a really funny documentary to listen to. And they're like, well, we tried, or we couldn't find anything. And we contacted China, and China said there's no such thing. And it's like, well, what's going on? The Chinese don't want to be involved with the Afghans at all. That was what they were saying. But they want the road through there as an arterial road to the west. But
That's great. Do you want to hear another fun mystery before we wrap it up?
yeah, it's good.
And this is very little to do with what I've just spoke about, but
It's history.
it is history. Alexander the Great, he died, yeah? And we're still not sure where he's buried, which I didn't know.
I don't really.
It just popped up then, and I was interested to have a little read.
I don't know much about Alexander.
It's hard to say, isn't it? Alexander.
Alex the Great.
Alexander. Well, maybe that's the next podcast. So, yeah, that is pretty much a sum up of the Terracotta Army. Hope you
Yeah.
enjoyed it. He was an interesting chap, and there's loads more on him, which I highly advise people to look into.
I didn't quite get the province of China, though, how it's set up. But it's all before Christ, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking like, I think it was 221 BC-ish.
Yeah. So Jesus wasn't about then, was he?
Yeah, BC's before Christ.
What's AD after?
After death or Anno Domini,
Oh, Domino.
depending on how you look at it, or whether you're Latin, I guess. Don't ask me what Anno Domini means, probably after. That was Educator Mate on the Terracotta Army. Thousands of life-size soldiers, all guarding one emperor who had a bit of a fetish for Mercury, and not a single one asking for a day off. If you've learned something today, give us a follow and we'll keep the facts marching your way. Catch you next time on Educator Mate.